And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to IT Career in Australia live stream. And tonight's topic is Scrum Master challenges and ways to overcome them. So thank you so much for finding some time to join our live discussion tonight. Please make sure to introduce yourselves in the comments. Let us know what you do and join our conversation with your comments and questions. If you're new to my live show, I'm Jana Martins and I've recently entered IT industry myself. So I'm passionate about learning more and also share my new findings with you on this YouTube channel. So currently I'm working as account manager in IT consultancy. So please get in touch with me if you're looking for any new challenges. So tonight we are going to talk about, as I said, Scrum Master challenges and ways to overcome them. And Jason is going to share his story, his challenges, give some tips on how to overcome them. We'll talk a lot about impediment management and Scrum patterns. So a lot of interesting content coming up. So make sure to share this video with those who need to hear this. So before I'll pass it on to Jason to introduce himself, I just want to quickly remind you that we're going live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you want to watch replays, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, IT Career in Australia. So I'm going live there every Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Melbourne time, with various experts from my network talking about all things around IT career, job search, and specifics of IT industry in Australia. So you can also join my meetup group to make sure you get notifications about upcoming events. And again, please don't be shy. Introduce yourselves in the comments, ask the questions, communicate with other participants. And the most active participants actually will receive a nice surprise at the end of the stream. Again, please use this live stream as your opportunity not only to learn new information, but to network with people in the industry. So that's enough, I guess, of me. Again, just remind you to introduce yourself in the comments, because if you don't introduce yourself, it feels like we're talking with crickets, so we don't know who we're talking with. So, and passing on to Jason to introduce himself, please.
Oh, hello. Thank you for letting me join. I think what you're doing in this space is absolutely fantastic for the IT community, which is really cool. My name's Jason. I'm an Agile practice leader at People's Choice, and I'm also the owner and I guess chief product owner of Scrumcraft, which is a training and consultancy business that I operate after hours.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. So I guess let's just dig straight into it. While people saying hi to us, Jason's here as well. Here we go. We have two Jasons.
Well, that's confusing.
So Jason, just tell us before we go to all the Scrum Master challenges, just tell us a little bit your story. Just I guess, what is your Scrum Master experience, and why did you pick this topic tonight to discuss?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my journey into Agile kind of started whilst I was a PMO manager. And so for our team, I was really keen on getting Agile experience in, I think it's about 2007 or something like that. And I guess as a manager at that time, I really thought that, the best way of getting into this field was to, get everybody trained, and away we go. We'll make the sort of standard kind of manager type mistakes that you would do in an Agile implementation, and think that everything's going to run smoothly, and they quite often don't. But it was a great training ground for experience. And it was really a little bit later than that I actually got into Scrum, and I found a real passion there. It was something that resonated with me so well. In terms of how I approach things, how I treat people, all of that sort of thing. So it really resonated with me well. And I just thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to, conduct work and work with people. And so started on my Scrum Master path then. So kind of like a little bit of a sideways step into Scrum Mastery when I was actually leading a PMO beforehand. So a conscious choice on my behalf to get into a field that I really enjoyed and continue to enjoy now. So I guess really from there, I've had a number of experiences across lots of different industries and I guess project types. And each one of those comes with its own challenges. Implementing Scrum, whether you're implementing software development or you're implementing business change, it can be technical or non-technical. I've had experiences in both and both had successes and I guess learnings along the way. Yeah.
Perfect. We have a few more people joining us here. Suzette saying, "Hi, I'm a new Scrum Master, but I'm an experienced project manager in the consumer product industry. I'm looking forward to share learnings today." Thank you, Suzette, to joining us. Also, guys, let us know. Let us know whoever's on the stream today if you are Scrum Masters or not. So maybe you're thinking to be a Scrum Master. So here we go. Vladimir is joining us as well. I'm a Scrum Master and in CO DPT, working with 6 team for already 8 months. My biggest challenge is what we still do not apply Scrum. The team are not mature enough, and I have resistance from the top management since they do not believe that Scrum will have a huge impact. I'm positive. Team are much more focused than at the beginning, and I believe that in the next quarter we will make our final step to our first sprint. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Vladimir, for sharing your story. So I'm sure that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. And before I guess I'll ask Jason to share his experience and challenges. I also want to share this poll that we ran just before the live stream, where I ask people what they think is the biggest challenge faced by Scrum Master. So guys, whoever's on the stream, please share with me on the comments as well. So if you haven't participated in this poll, so what does you think the biggest challenge? I think Vladimir has already kind of asked about, tell his challenge about resistance from the top management. And funny enough, in our poll, management expectations get the most votes. So 46% is vote for management expectation as the biggest challenge. And then next one down in establishing stable teams. So if you think that, one of these challenges is the biggest challenge for you, please let us know. We would like to hear your opinion. Here we go. And Suzette straight away, management expectations. So definitely winning today. So Jason, I guess back to you. So what's in your opinion, you think like the biggest challenge for the Scrum Master?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the challenges can be categorized in 2 different ways. Either it's in the form of an impediment or something that we can improve on, and management expectations is just as worthy a candidate for impediments as anything else. I guess what we got to consider is that impediment's not a dirty word. It's not something to be shy of. It's something that's going to help us improve. So if you look at an impediment, the mirror effect of an impediment can just quite as easily be an improvement concept that you want to undertake. I think in regards to that, one of the key things for me is when managing management expectations is understanding things from the management point of view. We often use jargon and project lingo or Scrum terminology, which can be a little bit foreign to those that haven't had experience in it before. So it's almost like we have to have like 2 sets of language, one that we can quite easily reference within our team, but another for when we're actually communicating with broader stakeholders such as management. So
yeah, and I think Jason kind of on the same page with us. Seems that convincing top management is always challenging than trying to get team agile.
yeah, I think that's probably one of the reasons why we tend to try and create a single reference model first. Creating one team to begin with, one team that can, on a small scale, uncover these sorts of problems and surface the things that are going to start impeding us along the way, whether it's management expectations or anything else. So
yes. And I guess, we want to talk a little bit more about impediment management today, a bit more in the details. And I guess the first things you wanted to mention about, what actually in Scrum Master control when it comes to this management is impediment.
yeah, for sure. I like to use the sphere of influence to talk about categorization of impediments. There will often be at a team level, like at a single team level, things that are within the team control or the Scrum Master's control to help facilitate impediment removal. And those things can just progress and get done, right? Because we've got the expertise and the knowledge and the know-how as to how to resolve those particular problems. But if we use the sphere of influence, there are often things outside of our control that we can only hope to influence. And they're often things that when we're in a scaled environment, a multi-team environment, we might need to collaborate with each other, or even beyond that, things that, we need management help with to resolve, people that can change the way in which the organization is structured, the way in which the organization considers its processes, or perhaps even financing improvements as well, getting the funding to be able to do those things. So they're all very valid things that we need to sort of consider when we're categorizing. But in categorizing it up front, we've got a better chance of resolving it, either because we know what we're doing or that we know that we need to escalate now. And that's one of the important findings from my experiences, is that escalate early. Just like impediment, escalation is not a dirty word. We're just saying we need some help with this because we don't have the expertise, or we are seeking opinions on alternative options and things like that.
Yeah, so basically, I guess the first step to realize what's in control, and the second step would be to escalate it as soon as you realize that it's not in your control.
Yeah, and you need help, and that's okay.
Yeah. So what about the team? Yeah, so what is actually what are examples? What's in control of the team?
Yeah, so things that it might be in control for the team are things like, how do we go about how we're operating, or if it's a choice on how we work through particular problems. If it's we've got the right people with the right know-how within the team, then that's something that's within the team's control. So I remember an example where I was in a particular set of Scrum teams, and I just remember seeing what was happening to another Scrum team and thinking, I wonder how I would have managed that situation if that was my team. And I thought, well, I don't have to sit here and wonder. I can go and ask the other Scrum Master and actually collaborate with them to go, oh, so what have you tried so far? And all, I guess, come back together. And the problem was that they didn't have expertise in a particular requirement that they needed to deliver and with a particular piece of hardware. And so we just brainstorm different ideas on things to try to, whether it's bringing in the expertise from outside, or whether it's upskilling somebody by taking them through some training or something like that. It was more just to broaden the potential opportunities. But once you've actually got an idea that it's something that's within the team's control, then just use the Scrum process to resolve that particular issue. You know, you've got your daily Scrum team observations that, you know, you can solve problems in real time on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. And then you've got this kind of more formal sort of approach of taking on board improvement ideas through getting feedback through your sprint review, and feedback through your retro to then generate improvements or kaizens, and have those items come back in to your next sprint so that you're able to solve for those problems next time around when you experience that problem again. Where street credibility comes into play for a Scrum Master is actually taking that improvement idea and actually making it visible on the backlog. We see so many teams that, we've had a great retrospective, we've come up with all of these action ideas, but just pick the one thing and put it on the backlog so that you can see it go through your team's process in the next sprint. You can see the results of that. And then as you're doing your sprint review, you're actually, showing people the improvement that you've implemented, and you're getting their feedback on that as well. So you kind of got this consistent circle of improvement going on. So street cred comes from putting it on the sprint backlog and doing something with it, but picking the few and just doing those things well rather than picking too many items.
And I guess Jason asking, what is Kaizen?
Japanese word for improvement. That's probably, yeah. I hope I got that right. I hope the translation's right. I'm sure that's probably a more complicated version of that, but no, it's the improvement idea or the improvement backlog item.
Smail is saying hi as well. Okay, so Vladimir actually have a quite specific question for us. So will you, to be more concrete, will you believe that in our project management system, we have more than 700 open projects? It was a big change to make management believe that an open project does not mean that somebody is working on it. Since the end of the January, we started to work on a limited set of tasks in 2 weeks period. My evil plan to move to spring.
Yeah, so taking that, they're able to consume this kind of level of change at the moment. You know, whether you call them sprints or you call them fortnights or whatever, it's your evil plan. Yes, I see it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's actually quite good, because I'd say that because you've started a number of different things, you must have a mechanism in there where you're able to park work, because working on 700 projects at one time seems like it's an unrealistic goal. So I believe that you've probably got some form of mechanisms to narrow down the focus on what is actually in progress right now.
And and hopefully get to that, get to this first sprint in the next quarter.
Yes.
So obviously we mentioned about what's in the team control and how a team can get the feedback, get in this feedback loop. So we still have this question, how the team actually can influence the rest of the organization. Because so we can control what's within the team, but again, what we're doing with these management expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. I just remembered a story, and I didn't think of this until now. But I remember I was at a particular client, and we were facing a number of management expectation problems, or where we needed management involvement. And I remember using an approach which I have got on one of the slides, but I created an impediment backlog that was made visible. It was something that was on the wall. It was available for everybody to see, and you could see where things were either stalled or building up a bit of a bottleneck and that sort of thing. And I was struggling to get involvement in helping us remove some of things. Very cheekily decided to put that impediment backlog on the wall outside of the manager's office so that
Jason, is it this one or?
Yeah. I was using
yeah.
the definition of done as a form of impediment backlog, but so I had it actually on the wall outside of the manager's office eventually, and every time the manager walked through their door, they would have had to have seen it, and it kind of made it more immediately visible to them. And so whenever referring to it, we had the conversations directly outside their door. They didn't have to go very far. And we would pick one thing at a time and talk about it and try and resolve those problems. But I guess one of the techniques that I use on a more frequent basis is using the definition of done as a catalog for things that are still getting in our way. And I always think about that term. You've probably heard it before, the shift to the left. There are things that maybe sit outside of what we do on a sprint by sprint basis, but still need to be done so that we can consider ourselves releasable. That release definition of done, that third column, if you like, if you were to consider a definition of ready to get ready for sprints, a definition of done to execute the sprints, and a definition of done for release, to be considered fully releasable. I often use that release definition of done as a training ground, if you like, for the team to consider what are some ways where we can move things from release definition of done back into our own definition of done as a team, so that we can maintain our releasability or potentially shippable kind of status for our sprints. So even in the most complex of organizations, taking this sort of an approach helps us to improve and shift that shift quality back into our definition of done, where sometimes it can be delayed towards the end of the product development cycle.
Do you have any, I guess, specific example when some of these things moved from release to definition of done?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about the things that you need to do to be technically ready, and you think about the things that you need to be change ready within the organization, so business readiness, often a lot of things on the business readiness side of things kind of reside in that. We'll do that towards the end, but I try and challenge those things and getting those things done, like process development, as-built documentation, so that we're going to be more frequently able to hand over to the support team once it goes into production, keeping them involved in that process, so that they can see things that are through our sprint reviews or through the execution of our sprints. Any training material being developed can be developed iteratively. Solution documentation, UAT itself, bringing subject matter expertise into your stable team, so that they're part of definition of ready, so getting your backlog items ready. They're part of reviewing the backlog items getting completed in your sprints. It lessens the impact of a significant UAT effort towards the end, because you've been moving it and shifting it left. The whole concept of DevOps is all about that, right? Bringing the development and operations together. So yeah, all of those sorts of concepts, except for final sign-off of business readiness, or final sign-off of a CAB process or something like that, maybe the last few things that might be challenging to do on a sprint basis. But even still, teams do that. So it is possible.
Perfect. So we have few questions coming to you, Jason. Vladimir saying, Jason, awesome answer. Talking about the backlog and choosing the items, what methods for prioritization do you use and recommend?
Yeah, for sure. So in backlog establishment, I'm a keen user of in creating backlog decomposition, story mapping. So if you're using story mapping to design what each stage of your workflow is going to do, and all the items that are in the backlog that belong to each stage of that workflow, and then applying Moscow, simply must-haves, should-haves, could-haves, won't-dos, against that story map, in a similar way to the original intent is to look at, what's release 1, what's release 2, still having that keen end-to-end concept of what your MVP or your MMP is, using that Moscow to utilize a very easy reference model for prioritization of your story map. So when first establishing your backlog, that would be the way that I've been able to do that successfully time and time again. And then continuing to take that sort of approach using your sort of release burn-up charts to understand how much scope you've got compared to the amount of time you've got left. And then you may have to be making trade-off calls on what your must-haves are, because as we know, we're often challenged as Scrum Masters to make everything a must-have. And so you can adopt some additional techniques there, which, if product owner has suggested that these are all must-haves, take it to the team and get them to answer the question of what is the minimum set of stories that we need to create an end-to-end process for this solution to work. Take everything out that was a must-have and making it should-have, and then taking it back to the product owner and talking through those. Now, they may want to still add your items back into the must-haves, but at least you've got a much leaner starting point rather than gold plating or looking at the best solution that we can. Better off to go for the MVP first, start getting feedback on a full end-to-end solution, and then adding in the few stories that you need to make it fit for purpose, to meet the customer need.
This must-have, should-have, this like Moscow example that you gave, is it quite general, like everyone using it in Scrum, or is it?
I would imagine that majority, 90% of teams is probably aware of Moscow, but I guess its application could be varied. So yeah, it might be well known as a concept, but how teams use it might be quite varied.
Yeah, depends. Prakash, have a question for you as well. How to handle or minimize the change requests from business that often leads to disruption of the sprint cycle?
That's awesome question. I love that question. And in fact, it's actually part of the last slide, to be honest, but there's a Scrum pattern called, there's a Scrum pattern.
This slide here, yeah?
Yeah, so whilst some of these things talk to kind of my favorite, I don't know if is there really a term called my favorite impediments? I don't know, but they're the things that I kind of see time and time again. Whenever we're launching a new team, they're the common things that we see is inability to create stable teams, having teams that are too large because they're not truly cross-functional. But this last one down the bottom here, the interrupt buffer, is a great solution to those interruptions that come through, which I hope answers that question. So you're often plagued with new requests coming through, and I like to refer to them as interrupt monsters. So you got all these interrupt monsters coming to you saying, I know you've started a sprint, but could you just, and you get all of these requests coming through for different things. What you can do is, as you're designing your capacity through sprint planning for your sprint backlog, is we can use another pattern called yesterday's weather to look back at your velocity over time, understand what the team's capacity and the types of interruptions that may come through, so that we can make a determination of, we can take on board 20 points. And of those 20 points in previous sprints, we've consumed at least 5 points worth of interruptions, which have added to our sprint, which means that we are less predictable in what we're delivering. I guess from there, what we can then assume is that if yesterday's weather is an indication of what's going to happen next sprint, we can create an item on the backlog for 5 points using yesterday's weather as a guide, and then continue on with sprint planning. It says, these are the things that we want to do. We generate the sprint goal. We make sure that we've got the right backlog items to be able to achieve that sprint goal. Now, as interruptions come through, the product owner is the one who can make the determination as to whether it's something that needs to be done right now. It is important for this sprint because we're about to go live, or whatever the case might be. Or no, actually, it should go on the product backlog because we can do that in 2 weeks' time, or something like that. Or no, I know it's important to you, but when I weigh up all the considerations of all of my stakeholders, that's really not going to happen anytime soon. We won't be doing that, and we can treat that request with the courtesy that it's due. So if the product owner does determine it's something that should be done and addressed now, it can form part of the interrupt buffer, and we can reduce that item for 5 points down to 3 points, and that interruption that came in, we give that 2 points if that's what the team has decided, and away we go. We haven't changed what we've committed to at the beginning of the sprint for our total story points. I use kind of a rule of threes for that sort of determination. One is, do we have enough time to deliver that interruption this sprint anyway? Can we consume it within the buffer? And number three is, were all the people that need to be involved in doing that piece of work being part of the decision to bring it into the sprint with the product owner? If the answer to all three of those questions is yes, then away we go. We include it into the interrupt buffer, and we reduce the points for the buffer. If the answer to any one of those three questions is no, it should go into the product backlog to be refined and introduced in a later sprint, perhaps the next sprint, maybe one after that.
So basically, to summarize this, we plan for interruptions in advance.
Absolutely. And eventually, managing the management expectations, they may come to realize that we're only over 2 weeks away from including that thing into the work that we're doing, and they may become more comfortable with that and be less, have less of an expectation of it needs to be done right now. 2 weeks is just as fine, right? So you start to move the expectation, and therefore you start to reduce the buffer that you cater for, because there's less interruptions coming through. Yep.
We have a lot of comments coming in. Vladimir is asking, Yana, could you please put some source of Moscow if someone does not familiar with it? So yeah, Jason, we can definitely probably, you can, probably send me some resource. I can put it in the comments after the stream so that people can check it out. Question from Suzette. How do you define how many Scrum Master resources are needed? Seems more straightforward to resource waterfall project and Scrum team work that includes much more variability and iteration in the work.
I was just reading the question again to make sure I got it right. But
Scrum Masters, how many Scrum Masters resources are needed?
Yeah, well, I think in principle, we should look to have a Scrum Master to begin with per delivery team or per Scrum team. As teams mature, that might get challenged, and management expectations might become a bit harder if they're a bit more self-led, self-managed. And so the Scrum Master role, in my opinion, I feel like it's better to have a Scrum Master per delivery team or Scrum team. The reason for that is that I believe that the Scrum Master role should be 50% in the coaching of the team and the organization, and 50% in the facilitation of the Scrum Master duties as such. Now, I guess from a theory point of view, the Scrum Guide and I guess other thought leaders out there, it depends. It can be a shared across a couple of Scrum teams, but if you start to share across multiple Scrum teams, you diminish you add in concepts like context switching, which is less effective. For every Scrum team a Scrum Master is looking after, you can reduce down their capacity to context switch or be effective in what they do by about 20%. The other thing is, as you start to share across multiple teams, you get less time to do highly productive team type concepts and team building activities and things like that. You become less strategic and more tactical because you're reacting to things rather than being proactive and getting the richness that you can out of the Scrum framework if you're spread across multiple teams, in my opinion.
The question would be, I guess, how do you influence the management to have enough Scrum Master resources for every team?
Well, I reckon it kind of comes into the H.A.M approach a little bit. So if you were to be faced with a situation where you're being challenged to have a dedicated Scrum Master per Scrum team, for instance, what your best opportunity of getting an understanding of what that looks like is to understand what are all the different tasks that a Scrum Master needs to do, and what are the things that we're not going to do if we are then spread across. That's the immediate sort of response to that sort of request and setting those expectations. So we focus on this set of activities, but we won't get to these value add activities. However, sometimes it's hard to take a message like that when it's not very tangible. So I like to take an approach where you articulate why there's going to be, or what the impact is, and then understand what the hypothesis is going to be if you were to do that sort of an approach, right? So by spreading a Scrum Master across multiple teams, we expect to get a poorer result in these particular areas. And so, yeah, from that perspective, because it may not have happened yet, we get to sort of say, well, to prove that theory, this is the sort of activity and action that we're going to take to understand whether that has come to fruition or not. And then decide on what is the data that we're going to use to be able to show that that will become the impact in the end to test the result. So kind of call it a hypothesis, an activity or an action and a measure type of approach. That way it's not too, you're not building an entire business case around why you need a Scrum Master per Scrum team, but you're at least providing some quantifiable sort of information. It's going to reduce, we're going to see degradation in the team's throughput, or we're going to not get the quality outcomes that we're looking for from being ready in advance of the sprint time and time again. And so over time, that's going to be harder to keep in front of your definition of ready. And that will potentially lead to quality issues and things like that whilst you're delivering. So, yeah, I like to use that sort of very simple, very lean business case type of an approach.
Yeah, to obviously to influence the management expectations and
Yeah.
bring it to them.
Yeah.
Jason, have a quick question. Just come back to the previous slide, so we can come back to the previous slide just for the second. We missed that one about the yesterday weather. So yeah, so is the yesterday weather is the average velocity?
That's a starting point. It's also understanding how we've managed to complete certain tasks in the past, and how we've done it in the past should lead to an indication of how we're going to do it in the future. So it's everything about what we've done so far, really, that may influence how we plan for future sprints. So in one case, it is velocity or capacity, but it might also be some other challenges that we might have faced along the way, and them still being present or them being removed will give us an indication as to how that will impact us moving forward.
Cool. Thank you, Jason, for clarifying this one. So, guys, we obviously at the 40 minutes mark of our stream. So don't be shy, ask some questions. So we have time for a few more questions. So if you have any particular questions, type it in, go ahead. So there is still, space maybe for 2 or 3 more. So, but Jason, I guess, let's summarize a little bit. Yeah, so we had a few questions here. We gave a bit of information, but okay, so let's get the situation. I guess I'm a new Scrum Master. I have a new team. I'm a new Scrum Master. I have a lot of pressure from the upper management, trying to build stable teams. So what would be your, I guess, top 3 tips for me how to face all the main challenges and move forward?
I think definitely is that when it's outside of your control, escalate it early, wherever that decision may need to go. Don't be shy. Have the courage to raise it in the right forum with the right people. And I guess in that context, it's also to have the hard conversations when they're necessary. Is not think that things are going to be better if you just ignore it, because it won't be. It'll come back. It will always happen. I think probably as well as make the issue visible, because if you're doing things without full transparency, there might be other people out there in the organization that can actually help resolve that. You may not know where help's going to come from. Somebody might walk past that impediment board that's sitting outside the manager's room and go, oh, I faced that problem before, and this is how I fixed it. Maybe I should reach out to them and see if there's something I can help with. So making it visible is really important. I think articulating the problem in business terms, in the language that the business knows, or the language that the management team knows or uses on a frequent basis, is going to be very helpful in telling your story. And so that's critical. We talk about a lot of Scrum concepts, and we talk about, I guess we use a lot of project language. Sometimes management teams just are not clued into that. So talk in simple terms. And I guess manage the problem until it's done. That's probably the key. Don't lose sight of the progress of that. If management team have said, we'll take it from here, you've escalated it to us, that's the right thing to do, we want to help you, we'll take care of it. Don't just leave it with them. Continue to follow up. You're their customer in this instance, right? So continue to follow up with them if you're not getting the type of progress visibility that you're hoping for.
Cool. Let me try to summarize it. Okay. So firstly, realize what's in your control or not, so to escalate it. Then make the problem visible, so you never know where the help come from. Mm-hmm. Then make sure you communicate in the business language, the business, to the upper management, and keep following up.
Yeah,
Here we go,
As that
guys.
you said it.
How that for the your top tips for overcoming Scrum Master challenges? Did I miss something?
No,
My
I
summary?
think, yeah, your summary was like you hit it right, nail on the head. I waffled on for ages, but you actually said it really succinctly.
I think what kind of really resonates with me, that idea that you don't know where the help might come from. And like sometimes we're boiling in our problem and we think that the problem is obvious for everyone, but as you mentioned before, the other team might not know about this problem at all, and they might already overcome this problem before. So I guess so you gave this example about this board next to the management, the management room, but now obviously so many of us working remotely. How we can make it visible in the virtual world? Have you any examples of that?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of cool collaboration tools out there. So whether you're using Microsoft Teams or some other form of collaboration tools like Jira or Confluence and things like that. What I always think about the principle of when we do a ceremony, or sorry, should I say an event in Scrum, we always have inputs. There's the discussion that we have while we're there, and then there are outputs. So I guess being prepared for an event is really important. Having the right conversations while you're in the event is really important. But what is more important than all of that is the communication back to your team, back to your stakeholders, whoever the audience or whoever your customer might be, and providing visibility of that in a digital format, so that you can show progress and collaboration that way. So digital tools do help quite a bit in that respect. Whether you're using Microsoft Teams channels and using Jira for showing what's coming up in your future sprints, you're able to show the decisions that you're making along the way, and people can self-serve.
Yeah. And I think it's, I guess, one of the challenges sometimes, and we're working fully remotely these days. So, then this board is just right on the wall, everyone kind of passing it and at least noticing it in some way. But yeah, if you choose to switch off some notifications and just don't want to look at the Trello board, then
a solution that kind of sits out of single team Scrum is when you start to expand out and start talking about scaling Scrum as well. And when you've got that kind of situation, you're not just working with a team that might be working in day out every minute with each other. You're talking about multiple teams that all might have impediments, that all need management visibility. So creating a mechanism for addressing those escalated impediments is really important. And there are concepts that exist within Scrum at Scale and Scaled Agile framework and other frameworks, where providing opportunities for synchronization or providing opportunities for access to executive, so that you can get that escalation path and have it clear and regular, so people and it's catered for, and that communication channel communicates out the decisions that it makes, becomes really important.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. So I'm just cautious about the time. We're getting to the 50 minutes at the moment. I think I didn't read the comments, the thank you comments from Prakash. Thank you very much, Jason. Suzette saying, thank you so much. The shared resources topic is definitely a current challenge I'm seeing. Guys, so thank you so much for all your comments and questions. So Obviously, if you're enjoying our discussions, please make sure to like this video. It will encourage me, obviously, to keep going and keep bringing, various experts and connections from my network to share their knowledge. So, please hit this like button as usual, quick marketing here quickly. Yes. So need your support as usual. So please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure to get notification about upcoming events. So join the meetup group. So don't be shy to say hi to me as well on LinkedIn. And obviously you can connect with Jason on LinkedIn. So he's some of the Jason's contact details, his email, LinkedIn, and the website. Jason, do you want to tell us a little bit more about Scrumcraft?
Yeah, sure. So at Scrumcraft, we provide Scrum Inc. and Scaled Agile training, as well as coaching opportunities and consultancy as well. So you can go to scrumcraft.com, have a look at the services we provide there. There's a training calendar that covers everything from Scrum Master certifications through to scaled agile certifications. And you can always reach out to me at any time to ask about, what sort of next steps are right for you within your career path. Helped a lot of people in understanding, what they need to do to be prepared for the next step. So always welcome to reach out.
Thank you, Jason. So guys, make sure to connect with Jason on LinkedIn and check his website. We have a few more comments coming in. The lab is saying, thanks, Jason, for the tips for the new Scrum Masters. I'm quite new to this accountability. I think Jason have one quick question there. Scaled Agile framework. Heard many people don't like that. Something about not being agile.
I guess you've got a lot of different scaled frameworks out there, and each one has got pros and cons in your context. So I guess what you've got to do is decide, what's right for your situation or your organization. And the thing with frameworks is that it provides you lots of opportunities to solve different problems. Whether you adopt all of the concepts that they talk about, or whether you adopt some of them when it's at scale, is completely up to you. And fit for purpose always wins over a full framework for doing the framework's sake. So if the scaled agile framework, for instance, isn't the right fit for your organization, which might be what you've heard, then do something different.
Perfect.
Plenty of options.
So just to wrap up our tonight's live stream, the exciting time, the giveaway. So today's giveaway is actually the whole coaching session with Jason. So how many? 60 minutes, Jason?
Yeah, go for the hour.
Mm-hmm. Go for an hour. So 60 minutes coaching session with Jason as a giveaway for, participating in our live stream and asking questions. So Jason, you have a think about who's will be a lucky winner. So you can scroll through the comments. And while you're thinking about that, I'll just remind everyone that obviously I'm going live every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Melbourne time. So next Wednesday, 6th of April, we're going to talk with Gretchen, and we're going to talk about the real benefits of diversity in the IT industry. So that's next Wednesday, 6th of April. And the Wednesday after, we're going to talk with Brella, and we're going to talk about what does a change manager do in IT industry. I'm sure quite a few of you heard about, this title, but it's not always clear what these people actually doing. So we're going to talk about it with Brella in 2 weeks. So Jason, back to you. The hard decision: who will be the lucky winner of the coaching session today?
Yeah, I had a look through, and if I just based it on the type of questions that were being asked and the frequency in which they were being asked, I'd have to go for Vladimir. Look, I'd
Here we
love to
go.
offer something to everyone, but yeah, Vladimir.
Vladimir, here we go. You're lucky winner of the coaching session with Jason. Make sure to connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not connected. I'll make sure I connect with Jason or just go directly. But I will follow up, make sure you guys connected. Really popular name these days, Vladimir, Not going to be political today. Skip this topic.
Now, I didn't even think of that, but yes, you're right.
So, Vladimir, make sure to connect with me and we go from there. Thank you so much again, everyone, for joining us tonight. Great questions, great interaction. I hope that everyone got some value from tonight's session. So, Jason, and just, I guess, to put you on the spot at the end and to, put the icing on the cake of today's live stream, could you please share with us your favorite inspirational quote?
Oh, okay. There's so many to choose from. I think whilst I think it was an Eisenhower quote, which is that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable.
Perfect.
So yeah, I think thinking about it from the perspective of the act of collaboration is and coming up with a plan is more valuable than the plan itself. As soon as day one of sprint one happens, the plan can go left or right. But as long as the team has come together to understand the challenges, we're going to come out with something pretty good.
Perfect. So guys, plans are useful, but planning is essential. What was the quote?
Yeah,
I forgot.
yeah. No, the quote was planning. Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable.
Yeah. Indispensable. Here we go. I learned a new word today again.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank everyone again for joining us. And I'll see you next Wednesday at 5:30. Thank you, Jason, again.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.